Good day, dear students. Welcome to our seventh lesson entitled Sexual Self. So these are the expected learning outcomes that you should be able to manifest after our recorded learning session. First is you'll be able to solve a sexual orientation problem. Second, discuss sexual self and human sexuality. Third, enumerate human sexual behavior. Fourth, identify sexually transmitted diseases, and of course, create ways to minimize teenage pregnancy. But before we go to the gist of our presentation, could you answer activity 14 on page 18 of your workbook? This is entitled Gay or Not Gay. So this is, of course, for you to examine a specific case and write your answers to the four tasks below the case. I would like to read the case for everybody. Mark and Judy are first-year college students and have been lovers for quite some time. They have been going out and have only kissed. Nothing else beyond that had happened. Judy, who seems to be sexually aggressive, asked Mark for them to have sexual intercourse. However, Mark respects Judy that he doesn't want to engage in premarital sex. Judy doesn't understand Mark. Okay? She feels that something is wrong with him, thinking that Mark is perhaps a gay or incapable of having sex with a female. One day, Judy decided to leave Mark and called it quits. So these are the four tasks that you should do. First is to identify the issues or problems based on the case. Second, suggest possible solutions or alternatives. Third, choose a solution. Fourth, provide reasons for your choice. Okay, this is a case which is quite simple, but for us to realize the essence of every decision pertaining to sexual orientation. And of course, this would also test your logic and your assumption in concluding. Okay, and of course, if you could recall the lesson that we had on philosophy, in which our senses are not really reliable sources of our perception because our perception may change based on our senses. Okay, so you could also apply it to that. And of course, after completing your task for activity 14, you reflect, you contemplate or decipher the relevance of the activity to our lesson. So welcome to lesson 7 once again, entitled Sexual Self. So let's learn about sexual self-orientation or concept. It is defined as an individual's evaluation of his or her own sexual feelings and actions. So you could say that Mom Marlene is in love with Pastor Clarence Buyukan. So I am in love with a male, okay? And I am a female, like that. Or you could say that Sir Aiken is in love with someone and okay, so that's just an example. Next is sexual self-concept. According to Mariev, this explains the gonads begin to form until the 8th week of the embryonic development. So, dito kasi tinitingnan natin yung, kumbaga, evidence that a female or a male is indeed feminine or masculine due to their biological organ, sex organ. Okay, so it is also any intervention with the normal pattern of sex hormone production in the embryo that results in strange abnormalities. A lot of people would say that a person is male if he has a penis and a testis, and of course, a female has an ovary and a vagina. But wait, there are sexual abnormalities like the Pseudo Hermaphrodites. This concerns a condition in which the individual has a single chromosomal and gonadal sex but combines features of both sexes in the external genitalia, causing doubt as to the true sex. So here we could see in the illustration number 1 the normal male development. There is a prostate, urethra, penis, testes, scrotum, and the like. While in the abnormal male development, we could say that they have clitoris like phallus. They also have blind vaginal pouch, and they also have testes. So you could say, and if you could see that this abnormal male development has a combination of male and female sexual organs. Another is the hermaphrodites, the condition of having both male and female reproductive organs. Yan po, makikita din natin sa illustration. And we also have another abnormality, the cryptorchidism. It is a condition seen in newborns when one or both of the male testes have not passed down into the scrotal sac and of course cause sterility or yung pagkabaog or impotence. Okay, so the illustration 1 depicts the normal position and most often stops between groin and scrotum. The illustration 2 sometimes stops but groin or strays off normal pathway. So makikita natin yung other side of testes na hindi siya nakaposisyon kung saan man dapat. Okay, so that's cryptorchidism. Okay, next is phimosis. This is the narrowing of the foreskin of the male reproductive structure and misplaced urethral openings. So you could see the normal condition of men, meron siyang foreskin, meron siyang gland, so normal iyan. But then for phimosis, yung foreskin of the penis cannot be pulled back. Okay, nandun lang siya sa harap. Instead na yung glands ang makikita, yung foreskin ang mas madami. Okay? Meron din, okay, so let's proceed to the concept of puberty. You also have your own thoughts about this, but this is a period of life generally between the ages of 10 to 15 years old when the reproductive organs grow to their adult size and become functional under the influence of rising levels of gonadal hormone. Okay, so for female, their puberty of course could be felt or manifested through the widening of hips, through the, of course, maturation of the breast kasi nagiging large. Sa mga male naman ay mapapansin natin sa pagbaba na kanilang boses, nagiging mature na. Okay? And of course, sa paglawak din ng kanilang shoulder. Ayan. Tapos meron na ding hairy body, okay? Yung sa armpit, yung sa legs, meron din minsan sa balbas ng mga lalaki, okay? You know that because you have undergone puberty, of course. And the reproductive organs continue to grow for years until sexual maturation marked by the presence of mature semen in the testes. In females, the budding of their breasts usually occur at the age of 11, signals their puberty stage, okay? So as I've explained a while ago. So let's tackle the diseases associated with reproductive system. These are the infections which are the most common problems associated with the reproductive system in adults. Vaginal infections are more common in young and elderly women and in those whose resistance to diseases is low. So diseases is really parallel with the low immune system that persons could have. So, first, these are the diseases associated with reproductive system. For male, they have prostatitis, the inflammation or swelling of the prostate gland, and it can be very painful and distressing. The normal prostate is, of course, presented in the first image, while the inflamed prostate is in the second image. So, kung mapapansin natin yung prostate gland, talagang namamaga. And for the female, we have urethritis, an inflammation of the urethra, that is the tube that carries from the bladder to the outside the body. Pain with urination is the main symptom of urethritis. It is commonly due to infection by bacteria. That's why if you have like this, strong antibiotics are prescribed to you so that you'll be healed. Okay? So, we also have the Aerogenous Zones. These refer to parts of the body that are primarily receptive and increase sexual arousal when touched in a sexual manner. This may vary from one person to another. Example of which are your breasts, okay, your neck, your thighs, your butt, okay, in the groin area. So, yun po. So, let's proceed to human sexuality. This refers to the way people experience and express themselves sexually. This involves biological, erotic, physical, emotional, social, and spiritual feelings and behaviors. So let's differentiate sex and gender. The terms sex and gender are oftentimes used by people interchangeably. However, in real sense, sex and gender are two different terms. When we say sex, this is the male or female category of a person. It could be biological and physiological, and it is largely unchangeable. Okay, although there have been instances where sex change have been occurring, especially in countries like Thailand and those that really advocate for surgeries. Okay, ang sinasabi dito ay kahit palitan mo man ang outer appearance ng iyong sex, hindi pa rin po when it comes to the genes and its inner characteristics. Okay? So, if we say this is biological and physiological, binabase po natin ang sex ng isang tao, sinasabi nating male or female base sa kanilang nakikitang sex organ. Vagina, ovary, testes, penis. Okay? While in gender, this refers to the masculinity and femininity of a person. Pagkababae at pagkalalaki. This is often social or cultural, and of course, this is changeable depending on the decision and, of course, effective learning of a person. Ayan. So, genders could be you are under LGBTQ, okay, which means that you are lesbian, you are bisexual, you are gay, you are queer, or of course questionable. We'll learn something about that on the succeeding slides. Okay, let's proceed to gender roles. This refer to more personal and cultural aspects of our femininity and of course our masculinity. It depends on how individuals demonstrate their maleness and femaleness and how they interact within the context of the society. Sample gender roles for men: they are leader, breadwinner, and they often appear dominantly. For women, they are follower, housekeeper, and submissive. So those are the gender roles in the olden times, but we are now open-minded. Our influences are widening, so the women empowerment is already, of course, being progressive. Why? Because the women are not confined in the four corners of their room. They do not just merely serve as housekeeper. And by the way, to be gender sensitive in our label, we should of course call our relatives or the women who are inside the home as homemaker. Okay? And of course, sabi dito submissive daw ang mga babae, pero more so noon kasi we are affected by the patriarchal, of course, society na impluwensya din naman ng mga Spaniards. Pero ngayon nagbabago na po, okay? Because many are learned, they are often learning the new ways on how to empower themselves, like that. So we have gender stereotyping. This is the generalization about the gender characteristics, differences, and roles of individuals or groups. So these are the examples. Physical: men are stronger than women. Psychological: men are logical while women are emotional. Second, in terms of sexual, men are sexually aggressive while women are passive. Okay, you just recall the case for gay or gay not. Okay, sino ang more sexually aggressive doon? Next is the socio-economic. Men are the breadwinners while women are housekeepers, but we could now have house husbands. Those who willingly open that experience for their wives also to be empowered, okay? Because they're working outside home. So let's proceed to the gender identity and sexual orientation. Gender identity is how one expresses his or her gender based on his or her feelings and personal perception of himself or herself, while sexual orientation is the person's physical, emotional, and sexual preference is to individuals of the same sex or opposite. So, an example of which is a husband and a wife, male and female. They are sexually attracted to each other and they have that so-called sexual orientation na straight sila. Okay? Meron din tayong tinatawag na a person is sexually oriented and attracted towards the same sex. So, tinatawag natin silang homosexual. Okay? When we say gender identity kasi, pwedeng may cross-dresser, pwedeng merong bisexual, ano. Next is, we will now learn about the LGBTQ+. So, L is to lesbian, is a woman who is attracted to and or falls in love with another woman. Gay is a man who is attracted to or falls in love with another man. Bisexual is a woman or man who is attracted to and or falls with both man and woman. Transgender is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity or gender expression does not conform to the typically associated with the sex or to which they were assigned at birth. Queer refers to any people who transgress distinctions of gender regardless of their self-defined gender identity or who queer gender, okay? The process of exploring one's own gender identity, gender expression, and or sexual orientation, yun yung questioning. Kumbaga, when it comes to sexual identity, sila pa yung nag-explore muna. Okay, and they are continuously identifying and discovering who they really are in terms of sexual orientation and gender identity. So let's proceed to human sexual behavior. Human sexual behavior pertains to any activity solitary between two persons or in a group that includes sexual arousal. There are two major factors that determine human sexual behavior. First is the inherited sexual response patterns that have evolved as a means of ensuring reproduction and that are a part of each individual's genetic inheritance. So, go ye and multiply. Okay, yan nga ang line natin. So, yun. Purposively for, of course, for reproduction and the longevity of course, a certain family, a certain line, bloodline, okay? There are two major factors that determine human sexual behavior, one of which is yung na described kanina, and of course the second is the degree of restraint or other types of influence exerted on the individual by society in the expression of his sexuality. An example of which is already depicted in the illustration, okay, that whenever you are with guys or of course a certain flock or a certain crowd, you'll somehow be influenced with their sexual behavior. So better yet, of course, select whom we join with so that we'll also have healthy sexual expression. There are two types of human sexual behavior. First is the solitary behavior. This is a self-gratification, is self-stimulation with the intention of causing sexual arousal and generally sexual climax. Okay, solitary means one, okay, and you could see their self-gratification and self-stimulation. So an example of which is what we call masturbation. Okay, masturbation could happen to a girl or to a boy. Basta ang pinaka-goal is to have sexual arousal and sexual climax kahit walang partner. So next is most self-gratification is done in private but sometimes practiced to facilitate a social sexual relationship. It is generally the beginning at or before puberty and of course very common among young adults, young males. So sometimes we could, yes, this is quite normal in the development, but then if it is very too much and it affects the normal function of a person, ayan, and very nasa room na lang ang kwan para ginagawa ito, it's not anymore healthy. So, ayan. Sabi dito, self-gratification is often more effective in producing sexual arousal and sexual climax than social-sexual activity. Sexual climax in sleep evidently occurs only in humans. Its causes are not wholly known. Most sexual climax during sleep is accompanied by erotic dreams. Okay. What an example of which is the generic term for wet dreams. Ayan. Na ang lalaki ay nananaginip, okay, na merong sexual activity with someone. That's why paggising niya ay nakaihi na siya. Okay, so yun yung palagi tinatawag nila during teenage times na wet dreams. Next, sexual climax in sleep is generally infrequent, seldom exceeding a dozen times per year for males and 3 or 4 times a year for the average female. Humans are constantly exposed to sexual stimuli when seeing attractive persons and are subjected to sexual themes in advertising and in the mass media. That's why for now during pandemic that children, the young persons are already prone to the social media, the YouTube, the Facebook, and other social networking sites. They are more prone to unrestricted viewing of pornography sites and other things that should not be seen because of their, of course, young age. Ayan. So, minsan, ang monitoring din ng mga adults, ang positive influence din ng mga magulang, ay importante. Hindi dahil ginagamit nila yung cellphone para sa online learning nila, hayaan lang na ganon. So, at the end of the day, children should be monitored by adults. Guardian man yan, or yung mga parents themselves. There are 2 types of human sexual behavior. Of course, yung solitary kanina, ngayon ay social-sexual behavior. This is the greatest amount of social-sexual behavior in heterosexual behavior between only one male and one female. Ito yung tinatawag nating faithful partnership, monogamy, kumbaga, hindi polygamy. And in here, heterosexual behavior frequently begins in childhood and may be motivated by curiosity such as showing or examining genitalia, and children may engage in sex play because it is pleasurable. We could say that in the phallic stage of Freud's psychosexual stages in life, ayan, masasabi natin na ito ay part ng sexual identity, yung pag-grow ng isang bata. Kaya minsan, meron tayo nakikita pag nag-aalaga tayo ng 2 bata, ay nagpapakitaan sila ng kanilang sexual organs. Pero bata pa yung mga yun ha. At let us assume na walang, kumbaga naging model na adult. Okay? Pero it's a fruit of their curiosity. And meron din tayong tinatawag na sex play na imaginary, yung bahay-bahayan. Ikaw yung nanay ha, ako yung tatay. That's an example of it. Okay? So, under social sexual behavior, we have petting. This varies from hugging, kissing, and generalized caresses of the clothed body to techniques involving genital stimulation. Okay, that's self-explanatory. And this could be done as an expression of affection and a source of pleasure, and it may occur as a preliminary to coitus. When we say coitus, that is already the intercourse. So petting could be considered as a foreplay. Another coitus is the insertion of the male reproductive organ into the female reproductive organ. So we have premarital coitus, marital coitus, and of course extramarital. So the healthiest among the 3 is the marital coitus. Okay? And let's proceed to the physiology of human sexual response. We have what we call excitement phase. This is marked by increase in pulse and blood pressure, an increase in blood supply, flushing, and swelling of all distensible body supplies. Okay? Yung excitement phase kasi para sa lalaki, mas mabilis yan. Pero sa mga babae, hindi yan mabilis. Kumbaga sa babae, kung walang stimuli, walang response. Kung walang masyadong foreplay, wala talagang magiging response. There is what we call the Platoon Phase. This is generally of brief duration, usually sexual climax occur. And we also have the resolution phase. This is the return to normal or subnormal physiological state. This is before, that is during, and of course, that is after. And let's proceed to the nervous system factors. Sexual response involves the entire nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls the involuntary responses. So let's take a look at the afferent cerebrospinal nerves. These carry the sensory messages to the brain. Okay. Minsan, kung nafe-feel natin na may nagtatouch sa erogenous zone, it is through the afferent cerebrospinal nerves that what we sense, of course, would be carried to the brain for a proper perception or thinking. Next, the efferent cerebrospinal nerve. This carry commands from the brain to the muscles. Ayan. So, if we are touched, then we feel it, we sense it. Through the afferent cerebrospinal nerve, nakikarry yung sense na iyon to our brain. Then, back to the efferent cerebrospinal nerve, nakikarry naman papunta sa ating muscles. Pwedeng mag-move yung muscles, mag-arouse, or pwedeng mag-contract. Yan. And of course, the brain is the coordinating and controlling center, interpreting what sensations are to be perceived as sexual and issuing appropriate orders to the rest of the nervous system. But no specialized sex center has been located in the human brain. There are some reflex sexual responses, such as stimulation of the genital and perineal area can cause the genital reflex, erection and emission of semen in the male, changes in the female reproductive organ. Medyo mag-i-inflame kasi ang female reproductive organ pag na-sense niyang ready, and of course, lubrication in the female. These reflexes are mediated by lower spinal cord and the brain need not to be involved. Ayan. Kaya pala minsan meron tayong tinatawag na hindi ka na lang nag-iisip. Puro feelings na lang. Meron din palang basehan because these sexual reflexes are mediated by lower spinal cord and the brain need not to be involved. Okay? Meron ngang involved sa nervous system natin pero not necessarily the brain. So, we now know. Okay? So, let's proceed to sexual problems. First is the premature emission of semen or the sperm. This is a common problem, especially for young males. Sometimes this is not the consequence of any psychological problem, but natural result of excessive tension in a male who has been sexually deprived. Second is the ejaculatory impotence, which results from the inability to ejaculate in coitus, or this is uncommon and is usually of psychogenic origin. Next is the vaginismus, a strong spasm of the pelvic musculature constricting the female reproductive organ so that penetration is painful or impossible. Nag-close kumbaga, nag-spasm, nag-contract, kaya not possible penetration. So, let's proceed to the sexually transmitted diseases and let's tackle this to our next video, the video number 2 for sexual self. So, thank you, God bless, and of course, stand by to the second video of this lesson.